Ashe greetings and goodwill to you all. Once again, my fellow natural, native, earthly humans the world over. This is yours truly, I, the Mystic Philosopher. And welcome to part 7, the continuation of my series of talks titled, Can Africa Be Set Free? Can Burkina Faso, the land of upright people, not crooked people, but upright people, be set free from the crooked people? Now, if you haven't yet watched or listened to part 1 through to part 6, I ask that you please do so before you go forward, or before going forward with this part 7, or that you please do so as soon as possible. Now, using China and the Chinese people as a practical example, I shall now begin to give you details. In the remainder of this series, I shall now begin to give you details on how you, or how we too, as Africans, as African people on the continent of Africa, also known as Al-Kibuland, and those of us in the diaspora and the motherland itself, the entire land itself, how it can be set free, how and when we will all be set free. And please note, my dearly beloved, please note, not how we can or how we will gain freedom. I will talk on that on a separate topic, freedom versus free, but how to be free, how to be totally liberated from the evil spells and curses of Belak and Belakness. How to be free mentally, spiritually, psychologically, physically, economically, politically, governmentally. You name it or you name them. But totally free and forever free from the clutches and the stronghold of our enemies, the real devils and their devil philosophy, aka the imperialists and colonialists and their philosophies and practices of colonialism. Colonialism, you see, for them language, my tongue can't even pronounce it. And imperialism, which, as I have mentioned and defined earlier in the previous episodes, is just colonialism, and imperialism is just another name for demonism and devilism. I had explained that earlier. And not only do I think, believe, and know that these people, these humankind, cannot change and cannot be changed, and that they are predisposed by their source and their maker, their creator, to be who and what they are. But that those among us who believe and think that they have changed, that they can be changed, or that they will ever be changed, or ever change, are either those of you who unfortunately believe that are either deceived by them, no doubt, or they too, those who believe such thing, that these creatures can change, are inherently stupid. But much more on that fact later. And before I continue, I would like us all to have a clear understanding, and understanding of who and what the word enemy means and is defined as, and who and what an enemy is, so that we can easily identify who and what our enemy is, and by extension, who and what our enemies are. So, who is an enemy, and what is the meaning of the English word enemy? According to the Merriam-Webster's dictionary online, an enemy is one that is antagonistic to another, especially one seeking to injure, one seeking to overthrow or to confound an opponent. Unquote. Another online dictionary renders the meaning of the word enemy as a person who is actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. Unquote. Now, from my perspective, this needs no further comments, at least for now. I shall now reference a quote from the late and historically the most distinguished Chinese military general, a military strategist, a philosopher, a writer, an author of one of the world's most famous and profound military science book called The Art of War, Sun Tzu. And I quote, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb to every battle." Unquote. Now, let me hasten to point out the fact that this book, The Art of War, from which I have just quoted, was written by a Chinese man who, as mentioned before, was a distinguished Chinese military general, a distinguished Chinese military strategist, a distinguished Chinese philosopher, and a distinguished Chinese writer, and that he wrote it for his Chinese people. And please note that it was not written for all peoples of the world, even though all peoples of the world now have access to it. And that is from my analysis and perspective. And the evidence will show, and the evidence has shown and is showing that they, the Chinese people, have not only read it, The Art of War, though they've read it and taught it to themselves, or taught it to themselves, thoroughly studied it. Not only did they thoroughly studied it, The Art of War, and not only do they cherished it, but that above all, they have practiced it, The Art of War, and are practicing every word of it. Yes, they are practicing every word of every word from the book, The Art of War, their book. Right at this moment as I speak, they are practicing it. And that is why they, the Chinese people, though they have been and are being criticized, though they have been and are being hated, though they have been and are being despised by some, though they have been and are being condemned, though they have been and have been being stigmatized, and possible though they have been marginalized, you name it, or you name them, by who? Their former invaders, oppressors, colonizers, and exploiters. But they are still one of the most, through all this and all of that, they are still one of the most distinguished, united, productive, progressive, prosperous, military, economically, and technologically powerful people on the planet today. If not the most distinct, if not the most distinct, that's arguable, if not the most distinguished, united, productive, progressive, prosperous, militarily, economically, and technologically powerful people on the planet Earth today. And from my perspective, that is all attributed to this book, Sun Tzu, written by Sun Tzu. Yes, the book called The Art of War. From my perspective, their success, their prosperity, their power, everything is attributed to that book, The Art of War. And whether you like them or not, but the evidence has shown that quite unlike most Africans, if not all Africans on the continent of Africa, And quite unlike most of us African descendants in the diaspora, if not all of us in the diaspora, the Chinese people on the continent of Asia and those in the diaspora know their enemies as well as they know themselves. The Chinese people know that their enemies covertly came to them in the past in the name of their religion and religions and in the name of their God and gods. The Chinese people know that their enemies will and are covertly coming to them again in the present in the name of their religion and in the name of their God. The Chinese people know that their enemies will covertly come and are covertly coming to them with sweet talks in the name of peace and goodwill and as friends bearing gifts while pretending to come in peace. But the Chinese people know that their true intentions, their enemies' true intentions are deceptive and evil. The Chinese people know that they know that colonialism is not my language, bear with me. And they know what colonialism is. The Chinese people do know. The Chinese people know that they know what colonialism is, and that colonialism is just another name for demonism. The Chinese people also know that just like how a leopard cannot change its spots, and at its core Satan the devil is Satan the devil, so too their enemies cannot change. That's a fact. The Chinese people know that they know that under no circumstances must they or should they deny or renounce their own history and their own past. Unlike most of us Africans and most of us melanated people, the Chinese people know that they know that those who don't know their history is destined to repeat it. The Chinese people know that they know that under no circumstances must they or should they deny, renounce, or dishonor their own Chinese ancestors, their own teachings, spirituality, their own spiritualities, philosophies, languages, customs, and cultural practices, and accept and replace them with those of their enemies, or their enemies' gods, and religions, and their enemies' philosophies. Chinese people know better than that. Again, and from my perspective, that is all attributed to what? The book called The Art of War by Sun Tzu. So one, if we Africans or melanin, carbon, and highly enriched people know our enemy, and by extension know our enemies, and please note, not just see them, not just talk about them, but know them and know oneself. If we know our enemies and know ourselves, as the Chinese people do, then we need not fear the result of 100 battles with them, because them are warrior, them like war, you know. Every sort of war, mental, spiritual, every war, them are warmongers. Meaning, when you know them, you'll know that. Meaning, we need not fear them. You need not fear the enemies. Just like Chinese don't fear them. And why? Because we know them. And in order to know them, we must diligently study them. We must study them to show ourselves approved. For your information, the thing called fear is the result of ignorance, also known as not knowing. Yes, fear is the result of ignorance. When you don't know your fear, just think about this for a moment, my people. Places and things that we are fearful of are the people, places, and things that we don't know. For thus it is written, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Knowledge is potential power. Activated and utilized knowledge is power. Therefore, we must know our enemies, aka our oppressors, in order to be free from them. When we know we need not fear anymore or anyone. We need not fear anything or anyone when we know. 2, if we know ourselves but not our enemy, for every victory gained, we will also suffer a defeat. If we know, and 3, if we know neither the enemy or ourselves, we will succumb to every battle. Now I ask that you please join me in part 8 for the continuation of Can Africa be set free? Can Burkina Faso, the land of upright people, be set free? In the meantime and between time, here's willing that you be more and more and much, much more, and definitely not be less. Don't be less, aka bless, or let no one be less you. Be more, for I am the Mystic Philosopher. Ashe, 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 I say. Thanks for listening.